Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Catherine and this is Raspberry Reads. Today I have a tag video for you. So I was tagged by Tristan over at L-Space-Books, so thank you Tristan for tagging me in this video. Coincidentally, I tagged Tristan at the same time that he tagged me. Tristan's just done his response to the video that I tagged him to do, and I will leave that link down below. But yeah, so I'm going to answer this tag, which is, how do you rate books? So I mentioned my ratings or rankings just in brief on one of my previous videos, which I'll link up in the cards and down below. But I think that this is a good opportunity to kind of expand on how I rate my books. So this, just to note, this tag was created by Emily over at Novelle Novels. And again, I'll link her channel down below. And I think there are 9 questions. And I'll also put the questions in the description below in case you'd like to answer these as well. So let's get into it. The first question is, how often do you DNF, meaning do not finish a book? And the second part of that question is, what makes you DNF a book? So I would say I used to never DNF a book. I'm quite stubbornly minded, I guess. When I set myself a task, I like to see it through. So for many years, I would not DNF a book. I will say, as a caveat to that, for academic reading, you tend to read in a slightly different way. So I would tend to read things like the introduction and the relevant chapters, some of the footnotes. So I wasn't reading something cover to cover. And in that sense, I suppose I would DNF a book if it no longer served a purpose for my research. But for sort of reading for fun, I would tend to read things to completion up until the last sort of couple of years. And I think the reason why I DNF more often now is because I read more diversely. I'm more open-minded to my reading, and then therefore you kind of invite opportunity to have duds, let's say. So yeah, so I don't actually mind DNFing now. I like to just try books out, and if they're just not for me, then that's okay. I move on. In terms of what makes me DNF a book, so for the most part, it'll either be for 2 reasons. So firstly, the writing is bad. So I've mentioned this before on my channel that good writing, gripping writing is really important to me. If it's overly simplistic or just sort of like lazy writing, then you'll tend to lose me. And by lazy writing, I mean just like overly descriptive without any sort of poetry or substance to it, let's say. That doesn't mean that writing needs to be complicated. It can be simplistic words, but it needs to be done in a compelling way. So yes, poor writing. And also the other reason why I might DNF a book is if it's got highly problematic subject matter, in my opinion. So if books are, particularly if they have a poor representation of women or treatment of women, I tend to find those books problematic. If they've got a lot of misogyny, let's say, or racism, prejudice against immigrants, LGBTQ+ community, that type of thing, I tend to go in, have a look at their perspective, and if I find it problematic, I'll just stop reading it. So the second question, so now we're moving into the actual rating. So the second question is, do you rate books 1 star? And the answer is no. I don't think I have any books logged where I've given them 1 star. And for that reason, I think if it was so problematic that I would give it 1 star, I probably wouldn't have finished it. So yeah, no 1 stars. That being said, you never know. The more I read and the more genres I try, maybe if something is poorly written but still kind of enjoyable, maybe it'll get a 1 star, but I think that's really unlikely. The second question, or the third question rather, is what is a 2-star book for me? So similarly to what I was already saying, a 2-star book generally will be that it's got bad writing, kind of flat writing, or it'll be problematic. To give you some examples of 2-star books, I've actually pulled up my Goodreads on my laptop in front of me. So for example, and I've mentioned this book before, I believe it was actually in the other tag that I did about the Don't You Forget About Me tag. But yeah, this is Harvest by Jim Crace. And so that book, the reason why that got 2 stars is because it was problematic in terms of its representation of women and lack of women in the narrative. Another book that got 2 stars was Wonderland by Ginny Reddy. And the reason why this one got 2 stars for me wasn't because of the topic or the writing style. It was because I found it so self-serving and self-centered that she was just sort of like inserting herself into these situations to try and create a book out of it. So yeah, that's why that one got 2 stars. And then otherwise, Magpie Murders by Anthony Horowitz. So the reason why this one got 2 stars is, 1, I thought it was boring, and 2, I thought the writing was terrible. So yeah, those are just some example of 2-star reads for me. Moving on, so is a 3-star book a good book for you? Yes, I would say. The 3 stars is the area where I say I would have the most sort of like a spectrum. So there could be bad 3-star books and good 3-star books. And I would say either it's a really good story, a compelling story, well-rounded and captivating characters, but not great on the writing, or the flip side to that. So we've got really good writing, but the plot and the characters are only sort of meh. And then in terms of 3-star reads, so we've got The Drowned World by J.G. Ballard. So this is a sort of classic dystopian. I gave this one 3 stars because the premise was good and the plot was okay, but I found the characters kind of boring, and I found the writing style, if I can remember correctly, that it kind of dragged. I mean, it was from the 60s, I think, so it's partly because it's dated a bit, but yeah, that one got 3 stars. And Possession by A.S. Byatt. This is another really well-known modern classic. And yeah, you could tell one of the reasons why I gave it 3 stars is because I didn't know what was going on half the time, and I can't even succinctly summarize that book because I just didn't get it. But I think the reason why I gave it 3 stars is because it was just unnecessarily complicated, really wordy, using unnecessarily complicated words, having lots of plot tangents. Yeah, it just wasn't for me. But then if we think about 3-star books that were actually like really good 3-star books, which maybe if I was to go back, they would be 4-star books. Tinkers by Paul Harding. I really enjoyed that book. I thought it was well written. I thought that the characters were interesting. It's a memorable book for me, but not memorable enough for it to get into that 4 or 5-star category. So all around, it was just a good book, so 3 stars. Similarly, A Single Thread by Tracy Chevalier. So again, it was just an enjoyable read. You know, the writing wasn't mind-blowing, neither were the characters or the plot, but it was just overall a really enjoyable read, so 3 stars. Yes, perhaps I should start doing half ratings, but at the moment I don't. Next question is, what is a 4-star rating for me? So with this, the difference between a sort of a high 3-star and then into the 4-star category is that it needs to be a really compelling or sort of innovative story, whether it's fiction or nonfiction. It needs to be gripping, engaging, emotive, and it needs to have excellent writing. And it'll depend on what genre it is as to what exactly I look for. So for example, with a mystery or thriller, it can't have a predictable ending. It needs to kind of keep me on my toes. With historical fiction, I look for sort of well-researched narratives where you can really imagine yourself in that time and place. And then for nonfiction, I like it to be accessible, but with good research so that there's not a lot of opinion or speculation in the writing. The next question, and I mentioned this already, is do I give half-star ratings? So no, I don't. And the reason why I don't is because for the most part, I was using, or have been using rather, Goodreads, and you can't do half ratings on Goodreads. So I got Goodreads in 2020, and I only just got Storygraph this past year, I think in January. So even though I can do half ratings on Storygraph, because I've got both apps, I just want to keep it simple and do a whole mark out of 5. Just to complicate things further, let me reach. So I also have this lovely journal, which my good friend Natalie gave to me when I was a teenager. And this actually has a record since 2003 of all of the books that I read, and I gave marks out of 10. As you can see there, it's got lovely illustrations of Hobbit. And yeah, so I still update this book as I read, but I maintain the out of 10 ranking. So I guess in that sense, you can get a better sense of out of 10 than out of 5, kind of. The next question is, do you rate 5-star books often? And what criteria do those books need? Sorry, I'm waving my pen. So I would say, again, like a 4-star read, they need to be innovative. So if it's something like fantasy or sci-fi or dystopian, it needs to have really good world building in it. If it's literary fiction, it needs to have complex and well-written characters. The writing needs to be good regardless of what genre it is. I would say if it's literary or historic fiction, I prefer to have beautiful writing, some very poetic writing. And then overall, it needs to be a memorable book. And these are sort of the books that I would say they'll always stay with me. So 5-star reads, they don't happen very often. And they just need to be so memorable and sort of like in a place and time. And I don't know what the, and I'm not sure with my schedule for my videos, but I am going to do a books with memorable moments video soon. And that video touches on some of the best books that I've ever read and why they're so memorable. But yeah, just looking at my Goodreads. So for example, I have to scroll all the way to the bottom because there aren't very many 5 stars. So classics, they tend to be 5 stars. So for example, we have The Hobbit or The Giver, Ella Enchanted. So this was a children's book or a, sort of like a middle grade book that was sort of like a retelling of Cinderella. That one I gave 5 stars. To Kill a Mockingbird, again a classic. Oh, and then more recently, so I read Flight Behavior by Barbara Kingsolver. I thought that her writing was just so beautiful that, and the story was good too, but the reason why I got 5 stars is because I loved her writing style. Equally, Robin Wall Kimmerer's Braiding Sweetgrass, that got 5 stars because it was just such an innovative book with a unique perspective. It was well crafted and had a really good balance of perspectives in it. Otherwise, what else do we have? An unusual one for me is Eleanor Oliphant is Completely Fine by Gail Honeyman. So this is a contemporary book, but it just had such a bizarre, lovable character of Eleanor that, yeah, I just enjoyed that book so much that I got 5 stars. And last one, let's just say Girl, Woman, Other by Bernardine Evaristo. So that one is another one that got 5 stars. The reason why, that one's such a popular book, but it was very innovative in terms of how it was presented. So as like the acts of a play, the cast of characters was really dynamic. It was touching on lots of really important topics, and the writing was really good. So yeah, that's another 5-star read for me. Has your rating of books changed over the years? So yes. And the reason for this is because when I was a older child and teenager, I predominantly read classics and historical fiction. And so by that nature, if I was always seeking out books that I knew were to my taste and being more selective, then generally you'd end up with a higher rating for a book, particularly with the classics. Once I started to try other genres and authors that I wasn't familiar with, I then started to have more books with lower ratings, let's say. And again, it doesn't mean that they're bad books necessarily. If it's a 3-star, it just means that it's just a different reading experience where it's good but not earth-shattering. The last question is, where do you record your ratings? So I already touched on this: Goodreads, the Storygraph, and my Hobbits journal. And also on my booktube channel. So this will also have a record of all the books I read from 2024 going forwards. So yeah, that's how I rate my books. I hope you found this interesting. Thanks again to Tristan for tagging me in this. I would like to tag the following people. So I tag Daniela over at Daniela Raye, Scotty over at Scotty Cherie Reads, and Chelsea at Libraries and Lattes. Equally, if I didn't tag you and you'd like to do this tag, please feel free to do so. And yeah, thanks for joining me today. If you're not already subscribed and you enjoy my content, please do hit that subscribe button. And if you are a current subscriber, then thanks very much for being here. I really appreciate it. I hope you're all doing really well and have a great day. Bye. Thank you.